What is the Pelosi factor? Well, according to a recent article in New York Magazine, it is the role former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi played in the indictment of former President Donald Trump. The magazine reports it was Pelosi who insisted there be a congressional inquiry following January 6th, and it was the committee she constructed that spurred DOJ action on Trump's alleged effort to overturn the 2020 presidential election. In an interview with the magazine, Pelosi said, quote, "I knew on January 6th that he had committed a crime."
The conservative case to disqualify Trump for office has come forward. Conservative law professors have argued that Trump is ineligible to be president under a provision of the Constitution that blocks people who have engaged in an insurrection from holding government office. The New York Times reports, according to The Hill, Trump said this week that he will not sign the loyalty pledge, stating they will support the eventual nominee for the party in 2024, required by the Republican National Committee for candidates to participate in the first primary debate.
I wouldn't sign the pledge. Why would I sign a pledge? There are people on there that I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have certain people as, somebody that I'd endorse.
So that's interesting. Not participating in the primary debates, I don't think is going to stop Donald Trump from running on the Republican ticket.
No, I don't think that there's any potential benefit to him even participating in the debates at this point. He's already running away with the field. The latest polls have him about 30 percentage points ahead of his next closest challenger. And a new poll that shows him in a head-to-head matchup with Joe Biden shows that he has a 2 percentage point lead, which is probably within the margin of error. And interestingly, Vivek Ramaswamy has a closer matchup with Biden than Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. So far, it seems like Trump is going to sail ahead and be the GOP nominee. Now, I think this claim from Nancy Pelosi that it was the January 6th committee that sparked DOJ action is kind of interesting, because we do know that the DOJ was putting out flyers all across Washington, D.C. in the aftermath of the Capitol riot, looking to slap charges on anyone who was even in the building that day, regardless of whether or not they participated in the violence that led to the breaching of the Capitol doors and the Capitol police officers. And so I don't think it was a stretch to think that they were going to try to go after former President Donald Trump afterwards. And that committee in itself was highly politicized. It was hardly a fact-finding investigation. Nancy Pelosi refused to allow Republicans to have their picks to sit on the committee. They ended up having Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, who were sort of notorious never-Trumpers at that point. And there were a lot of questions regarding the Capitol riot that I think deserved to be investigated that weren't on that committee because it turned into a get Trump endeavor. I mean, for example, Nancy Pelosi reportedly declined having additional National Guardsmen come to stand outside of the Capitol on that day, which was requested by Donald Trump at the time. So that was one, I think, thread of investigation that should have been looked at. We should have been able to look into how many federal agents were there that day and whether or not they actually tried to incite the violence themselves. And so this was, again, a highly politicized committee. And so for her to take credit for this eventual indictment is pretty ridiculous, but I guess makes sense because I find the indictment itself to be quite political.
Yeah, I don't know if Nancy Pelosi herself can take credit here, given her limited involvement with the committee. I think that the evidence that was brought forth of people who are former members of the Trump cabinet and who are very close to the president during January 6th, on January 6th, and then the days leading up to January 6th made it pretty clear what Trump's state of mind was, what they were up to, the way that we had the Secret Service delete so many text messages from those days was quite shocking information. The testimony from the Secret Service that was close to Donald Trump that day was quite shocking as well. So from the limited evidence that we've had admitted into the court of public opinion, thanks to the January 6th committee, is pretty damning for Trump. I think that there's pretty much nothing to the contrary you could provide that would negate what we learned about Trump in the January 6th committee, what he was up to, what he was saying, what the recordings of him show him to be saying that you can listen to, what the text messages and emails he exchanged with people close to him said. I think there's enough there that it's pretty clear that Trump would have been indicted whether there was a committee or not, given the evidence that they have as to what he was up to leading up to January 6th and on the day of January 6th. Can Pelosi take credit for that? No, there's a lot of things that Democrats take credit for that they can't. About the primary race, though, I don't think this is going to affect the primary race as much as people think. I think the polling that shows Republicans will not vote for Donald Trump if he's convicted of a felony isn't the full picture of the Republican mentality. I think they hear that and they assume a new felony that has not been played out in the court of public opinion in the way that January 6th has. I think they hear that and think, oh, if Donald Trump kills someone tomorrow and commits a felony, I will not vote for him. So the language in the poll is far more important. I could see a world where DeSantis doing this debate with Gavin Newsom and the rest of the Republican field having a debate could lead to another candidate being competitive with Trump, though.
Yeah, or potentially emerging as a vice presidential pick, one that we maybe hadn't considered before, or Trump hadn't considered before. And then Nancy Pelosi, on that point as well, she also took a lot of credit for the public broadcast of the January 6th committee findings, which had sort of notoriously poor ratings. And she basically said that it didn't matter that nobody watched it because the production value was so awesome and they did such a good job with the staff members putting it together. And that combined with her claim to, have the credit for this eventual indictment just seems like she's pretty out of touch with reality here. And she wants to have this be her crowning achievement because she liked that girl boss moment of ripping up Trump's State of the Union address, or when she left the Oval Office after a set of negotiations with the former president, there was this picture of her rubbing her hands together in success. It seems like it's more about boosting her own image than it is actually identifying a real victory.
Yeah, I hope she's using this as her legacy or her victory lap, and she's hoping to retire soon. That's what I'm hoping for. I think Nancy Pelosi has done enough. It's really time for her to retire. She's so disconnected from the public and the base of Democratic voters who are quite progressive. I think she's used her office as the Speaker of the House just to essentially make herself more rich. There's the Pelosi fund where people can invest in an index fund that literally mirrors the Pelosi's trades. That's the extent to how much insider trading the Pelosi family has. And so for her to do the bare minimum when passing progressive policy, things that are popular among her constituents, and then to go on and say she's taking credit for the Trump indictment by the DOJ is just ridiculous.
She's going to look really silly, too, if Trump ultimately does not get convicted of these charges. I mean, taking this early victory lap and taking credit for everything that the DOJ is doing, basically the entire investigation. If Trump ends up beating the charges, then why would she want that to be the crowning achievement or the feather in her cap if he ends up walking away from all of this? That's going to do it for us this week on Rising. Jessica, it was great to be back with you. Same time next Friday?
Yeah, same time next Friday. Everyone be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who listen while you're on the go, we're available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Bye, y'all.